My brother's graduation dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but it turned into a nightmare when my mother sneered, "No degree, no seat at the main table." She ordered expensive wine, expecting me to pay. I stayed silent until the bill arrived, and I revealed a secret that destroyed their financial reality forever. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The restaurant smelled of old money, leather, mahogany, and a faint, cloying scent of lilies that seemed to mask the underlying staleness of the place. It was the kind of establishment where the menus didn't have prices, and the waiters wore tuxedos that fit better than most people's wedding suits. My mother, Lucy, had insisted on it. "Le Jardin," she had announced weeks ago, her voice practically vibrating with self-importance. "Only the best for Lucas. He is, after all, the first in this family to achieve something of significance." I remembered the way those words had hung in the air of my workshop, floating amidst the dust motes of the antique oak table I was restoring. Something of significance. I hadn't said anything then. I just kept sanding, the rhythmic shhh of the sandpaper providing a meditative barrier against her passive-aggressive barbs. I was used to it. I was the one with the calloused hands, the one who came home smelling of varnish and sawdust, the one who had thrown away her potential to work in a trade. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was about Lucas. I had washed the varnish from my hands, scrubbed the grime from under my nails until my skin was raw, and put on the silk dress that cost more than my first set of power tools. I wanted to be proud. I wanted to belong. I walked toward the private alcove Lucy had reserved, spotting them instantly. They looked like a tableau from a magazine. Lucy was radiant in a shimmering silver gown, holding court. Joseph, my father, sat beside her, looking uncomfortable in his stiff collar but nodding along to whatever she was saying. And Lucas, the man of the hour, the freshly minted Bachelor of Arts, sat at the head of the table, looking flushed and victorious. I approached with a smile plastered on my face, a graduation card heavy with a check in my clutch. "Hey, everyone," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the hushed acoustic of the room. "Sorry I'm a few minutes late, the traffic coming from the workshop was." I stopped. I stood at the edge of the circular table. There were 4 people: Lucy, Joseph, Lucas, and Lucas's girlfriend, a quiet girl named Sarah who looked terrified. There were 4 chairs. I looked around, thinking perhaps the waiter had just pulled one away to let someone pass. But the spacing was deliberate. The table was set for 4. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, perfectly folded napkins, 4 distinct settings. "Oh," I said, the smile faltering, feeling a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. "It looks like they missed a setting. Let me just flag down the waiter." I raised my hand, but Lucy's voice cut through the air like a diamond cutter on glass. "Don't bother Amelia." I lowered my hand, turning to look at her. She wasn't looking at me. She was inspecting her manicure, a look of bored indifference on her face that I knew hid a razor-sharp intent. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, finally lifting her eyes. They were cold, devoid of any warmth a mother should have. "We reserved the main table for the family, the achievers. This is a celebration of higher education, darling, a celebration of intellect." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my hands, as if she could still see the phantom sawdust. "You didn't go to college," she stated, her voice loud enough that the table nearby stopped eating to listen. "You chose manual labor. You don't belong at the main table. It wouldn't be appropriate." The silence that followed was deafening. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at Joseph. "Dad." Joseph coughed, suddenly finding the pattern on the tablecloth fascinating. "Now, Amelia, don't make a scene. Your mother just wants everything to be perfect for Lucas." I looked at Lucas, my little brother, the boy I had bought his first car for. Lucas. Lucas swirled his water glass, a smirk playing on his lips. I mean, Mel, it is kind of an exclusive vibe tonight, academic elite and all that. You can probably grab a burger at the bar or something, we can catch up after. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It wasn't just exclusion, it was a public disowning. I felt physically ill, my stomach churning. The bar. I repeated, my voice hollow. Yes, Lucy said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. Go sit over there, we'll wave if we need anything. She turned sharply to the waiter who had just approached, her demeanor shifting instantly to sugary charm. Garçon, we are ready to order the wine. We'll start with the Chateau Margaux, the 2005 vintage. 2 bottles. I froze. I knew that wine. I knew the price list of this place, because I was the one who had sent Lucy the credit card authorization form to secure the reservation. And, Lucy added, flashing a smile at the waiter, bring the caviar service. The large one. The waiter hesitated, glancing at me standing awkwardly by the table. And for the lady. Oh, she's leaving, Lucy said. Or sitting at the bar, she's not with us. I stood there for a second, the humiliation burning my skin. I watched my mother, the woman who had never worked a day in her life, order thousands of dollars worth of wine. I watched my brother, who had barely scraped a C average, preen like a king. I didn't storm out, I didn't scream. I felt something inside me snap, not a break, but a release. A locking mechanism disengaging. Okay, I said softly. What? Lucy snapped. I said okay. I took a step back. Enjoy the wine. I walked to the bar, but I didn't order a burger. I ordered a sparkling water. I sat there 30 feet away and I watched them. I watched them laugh. I watched them toast. I watched them drink the wine that cost more than Joseph made in a month. I waited. 2 hours later, the bill came. I saw the waiter present the leather folder to Joseph. Joseph opened it, paled, and immediately slid it toward Lucy. Lucy opened it, scanned the total, and then, with the confidence of a queen, gestured toward the bar. Toward me. The waiter walked over to me. I swiveled my stool around. Ma'am, the waiter said, looking uncomfortable. The lady at the table, your mother, she indicated that you are handling the check. I looked at the waiter. Then I looked across the room. Lucy was watching me, a smug, expectant look on her face. She raised her glass in a mock toast. She expected me to crumble. She expected me to be the dutiful daughter who paid for the privilege of being abused. I looked at the bill in the waiter's hand. It was $3,400. I stood up. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the stool. Who's covering the $3,000? The waiter asked, sensing the tension. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice steady, loud enough to carry across the quiet room. Not the one who doesn't belong. And then I walked out the front door. The night air hit me like a physical blow, cold and sharp against my flushed skin. I didn't stop walking. I marched straight to my truck, my beautiful, reliable, heavy-duty pickup that Lucy called a monstrosity, and climbed inside. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could jam them into the ignition. As the engine roared to life, a guttural, powerful sound that usually brought me comfort, I felt the first sob claw its way up my throat. I swallowed it down. I refused to cry. Not here. Not in the parking lot of Le Jardin, where the valet was looking at me with a mixture of pity and confusion. I pulled out onto the highway, merging into the stream of traffic, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon. The silence in the cab was heavy, pressing in on me. I kept replaying the scene in my head. You don't belong at the main table. It wasn't just the words, it was the history behind them. It was 29 years of being the other child, the practical one, the sturdy one, the one who didn't need praise, just instructions. My phone, which I had tossed onto the passenger seat, lit up. Then it buzzed. Then it started ringing. Caller ID, Ma. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started again. Caller ID, LUCAS. I gritted my teeth, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I could imagine the scene inside the restaurant, the panic setting in, the waiter hovering. The realization that the credit card they assumed was on file, my credit card, was not going to be produced. I merged onto the exit for my apartment, my breathing ragged. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The physical toll of the adrenaline dump was setting in, my limbs felt heavy, my head was pounding, and there was a sharp, stabbing pain behind my eyes. I pulled into my driveway and killed the engine. The silence returned, but the phone kept lighting up the dark cab like a strobe light. Text from Lucy, Amelia, where are you? The waiter is threatening to call the police. Come back this instant. Text from Lucas, Mel WTF. This isn't funny. Mom is freaking out. Pay the bill. Text from Joseph, Amelia, please be reasonable. Reasonable? I laughed, a harsh, dry sound in the darkness. They wanted reasonable. They wanted the Amelia who nodded and fixed things. The Amelia who paid the mortgage when Joseph forgot. The Amelia who covered Lucas's tuition when his scholarship fell through because his grades slipped. I picked up the phone. I didn't answer. I just stared at the messages piling up. They thought this was just a temper tantrum. They thought I had walked out to make a point and that I would turn around, come back, apologize for causing a scene, and hand over my platinum card. They thought this was a negotiation. But as I sat there, staring at the photo of my workshop on my phone's background, the business I built from nothing, the reputation I earned with sweat and blood, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. They truly didn't understand the power dynamic. They believed their own lie. They believed that because they had the degrees and the social standing, they held the power. They believed that I, the uneducated tradeswoman, was beneath them, lucky to be allowed in their orbit to pay for their orbit. I looked at the text from Lucy again. The waiter is threatening to call the police. Let him, I whispered to the empty truck. They had forgotten one crucial thing. It wasn't just tonight's dinner. It was the house. It was the cars. It was the entire facade of their upper-middle-class existence. Everything was built on a foundation that I maintained, and they had just taken a sledgehammer to the only load-bearing wall they had. I turned my phone off. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room, the darkness slowly giving way to the gray light of dawn, surrounded by the silence of my own home. My paid-for home. To understand why walking out of that restaurant was the hardest thing I've ever done, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the debt I felt I owed them, a debt Lucy had been calculating since the day I turned 18. I wasn't the daughter Lucy wanted. Lucy wanted a debutante. She wanted a daughter who played the cello, spoke French, and married a doctor. Instead, she got me. I was a tomboy who liked taking apart toasters to see how they worked. I was the kid who came home with dirt under her fingernails and scrapes on her knees. When I announced I wasn't going to university and instead was using my savings to buy a dilapidated van and start a furniture restoration business, Lucy practically held a funeral for my future. You'll be a servant, she had told me, her voice trembling with what I thought was concern but later realized was shame. You'll be cleaning up other people's garbage. But I was good at it. I had an eye for wood, a patience for detail that bordered on obsession. Amelia's restorations didn't stay a man in a van operation for long. By 24, I had a workshop. By 26, I had a waiting list of clients that included the city's museums and high-end antique dealers. The money followed, real money, not the allowance money Lucy grew up with, but liquid cash. And that's when the dynamic shifted, or rather, that's when the parasite attached itself. It started small. Joseph's hours were cut at the firm. Could I help with the electric bill? Of course. I was the dutiful daughter. Then it was the roof. Then it was Lucas's car insurance. Lucy never asked. She insinuated. She would sigh, looking at a bill, and say, "Oh, the stress is just killing your father. If only we had a little breathing room." And I, desperate for her approval, desperate for her to look at me with pride instead of disappointment, would write the check. I bought their affection. I knew it deep down, but I told myself it was what families did. Then there was Lucas, the golden boy. Lucas was everything I wasn't. Charming, academic, or so they claimed, and utterly helpless. He bounced from major to major philosophy, then art history, finally landing on general humanities. Lucy preened over him. My scholar, she called him. She never called me her anything. I was just Amelia. Or, when she was talking to her friends, Amelia, who works with her hands. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the sun crest over the horizon. Lucy wasn't just a snob, she was a predator disguised as a victim. She was a woman who believed the world owed her a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and she had groomed me to be the financier of that delusion. She wore designer clothes she bought on credit cards I paid off. She drove a leased Mercedes that was in my name because her credit score was non-existent. She was the primary antagonist of my life, not because she was evil in a cartoonish way, but because she knew exactly where my buttons were and she pressed them with surgical precision. She knew I craved validation, so she withheld it, dangling it just out of reach, purchasable for the price of a mortgage payment or a tuition fee. But last night she had overplayed her hand. She had become so comfortable with my submission, so assured of my desperate need to belong, that she thought she could humiliate me in public, and I would still pick up the tea. She thought she could segregate me from the family while using my resources to celebrate the better child. She thought I was a blunt instrument, a hammer. She was about to find out that I was a master craftsman. I knew how to build things, yes, but I also knew exactly how to take them apart. I knew where the joints were. I knew which screws held the entire structure together. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't open my email. I didn't check my texts. I opened my online banking portal. The screen illuminated my face, casting a blue glow over the room. I looked at the list of accounts, the joint accounts, the supplementary cards, the direct debits. You want to be the main table, I whispered, my finger hovering over the mouse. You want to be the elite. I clicked on the first account, Joseph and Lucy, household expense account. I selected options. I moved the cursor to freeze account. I clicked. The morning after the dinner, the sun didn't just rise, it glared. I sat in my office at the back of the workshop, surrounded by the smell of sawdust and linseed oil, scents that usually grounded me, but today felt like the remnants of a life I was actively dismantling. My phone was still buzzing intermittently, a frantic heartbeat on the scratched oak desk. 37 missed calls, 14 voicemails, a string of texts that ranged from pleading to vitriolic. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on the 3 computer monitors glowing in front of me. I wasn't just a carpenter. Running a business meant I was also an accountant, a project manager, and a logistics expert. I knew how to track a paper trail. And for the first time in my life, I was turning those skills on my own family. Okay, I muttered to the empty room, taking a sip of cold coffee. Let's see the damage. I had already frozen the joint account I shared with Joseph for household emergencies. That was the easy part. But as I dug deeper into my own credit report, a cold knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. I pulled up my credit history. I expected to see my business loans, my truck payments, my mortgage, standard, healthy debt. What I saw made the blood drain from my face. There was a credit card opened 18 months ago, the Platinum Rewards card. Balance, $24,500. Status, past due. I hadn't opened that card. I clicked on the transaction history. It was a roadmap of Lucy's vanity. Sephora, $450. Nordstrom, $1,200. The Ritz-Carlton Spa, $800. Then I saw the transfers. $2,000 to Luca's Cash App. $1,500 to Luca's Venmo. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking loudly in the silence. Identity theft. My own mother had committed identity theft against me. She had used my social security number, which she obviously knew by heart, to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford, all while mocking the very work that made my credit score distinct enough to exploit. But the real horror wasn't the credit card. It was the tuition payments. For 4 years, I had written a check every semester for $12,000 to cover the gap in Lucas's financial aid. I wrote them to Joseph, who insisted he handled the bursar's office directly to save me the paperwork. I pulled up the images of the cashed checks from my bank's archive. Pay to the order of Joseph and Lucy Miller. Endorsement on back, for deposit only into act ending in 4490. I froze. Account 4490 wasn't the university. It wasn't even the joint account I had access to. It was a private account I didn't know existed. They didn't pay the school, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. So how is Lucas paying for school? I needed to know. I couldn't just guess anymore. I needed concrete, admissible proof. I grabbed my keys, but not for the truck. I walked over to the large, steel filing cabinet in the corner where I kept my old legal documents. I pulled out the power of attorney form Joseph had signed 3 years ago when he had his heart scare. He had never revoked it. I had legal authority to access his financial records. I drove to the bank, not the branch in town where everyone knew us, but the main branch in the city. I walked in with my binder of documents, wearing my work boots and a flannel shirt, my face set in a mask of grim determination. The banker, a young man named David, looked at the power of attorney and then at me. Everything seems to be in order, Ms. Miller. What documents are you looking for? I need statements for account 4490, I said, my voice steady. Going back 4 years, and I need to know if there are any student loans associated with Joseph Miller or Lucas Miller that are co-signed by this account. David typed for a moment, his brow furrowing. I can print the statements. As for the loans, yes, there are 4 Parent Plus loans attached to Joseph's profile, totaling $120,000. My knees nearly buckled. I had given them nearly $100,000 in hex for tuition. They had pocketed my money and taken out loans in Joseph's name anyway. They were drowning in debt, stealing from me, and ruining their own future, all to maintain an illusion. Print it, I said. Print everything. I was back at the workshop by noon, the stack of bank statements sitting on my desk like a loaded weapon. I was highlighting a transaction, Vegas trip, $4,000, paid for with money that was supposed to be for Lucas's textbooks, when I heard the tires crunch on the gravel outside. I didn't look up. I knew who it was. The aggressive slam of a car door was a dead giveaway. The workshop door flew open, banging against the wall. Amelia. Lucy's voice was a shriek. She marched in, followed closely by a pale-looking Joseph and a sullen Lucas. Lucy was wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, looking like a celebrity dodging paparazzi, but the tension in her jaw ruined the effect. You ungrateful, spiteful little, she started, marching toward my desk. Do you have any idea what you did last night? The humiliation. The waiter threatened to call the police on us, on the Millers. I kept highlighting. Chanel boutique, $2,800. We had to call your Uncle Jerry to bail us out, Lucas added, leaning against a workbench and looking at his phone. It was super embarrassing, Mel. Seriously, you owe Jerry $3 grand. I don't owe anyone anything, I said, finally looking up. I didn't stand. I stayed seated, the heavy oak desk acting as a fortress between us. And get off the workbench, Lucas. That's a 300-year-old walnut slab. It's worth more than your education. Don't you dare speak to your brother like that. Lucy slammed her hand on my desk. Unfreeze the accounts, Amelia, right now. The mortgage is due on Tuesday, and my card was declined at the gas station this morning. Do you know how that looks? Do you? It looks like you're broke, I said calmly. We are not broke, Lucy hissed. We are illiquid because you are throwing a tantrum. Now fix this. Apologize to your brother for ruining his night, transfer the funds, and we will discuss your punishment later." "Punishment?" I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "You think you're in a position to punish me?" I picked up the first sheet of paper from the stack. The credit card statement for the card she opened in my name. "Who opened the platinum Visa in my name? Lucy." The color drained from her face instantly. She froze, her hand still on the desk. I don't know what you're talking about. Whatever that is, it's a mistake." "It has your signature on the application," I said, holding up the photocopy the bank had faxed me. "And the billing address is your house. That's fraud, Mother. Federal fraud, identity theft, punishable by up to 15 years in prison." Joseph made a small, choking sound. "Amelia, now, let's not use words like prison." "Then let's use words like theft," I said, turning my gaze to him. I slammed the stack of bank statements down. "I gave you $96,000 over 4 years for Lucas's tuition. Where is it, Dad?" Joseph looked at his shoes. He looked at Lucy. He looked at the exit. There were expenses, the house, maintaining our standing. It's expensive, Amelia. You don't understand the pressure. I understand that you took my money, spent it on designer clothes and vacations, and took out 6 figures of loans in your own name to cover the school, I said. I understand that you are financially destitute and you've been using me as a piggy bank. It was for the family, Lucy screamed, abandoning the denial. We needed to maintain appearances. For Lucas, for his future, you have plenty of money. You grub around in the dirt and make thousands. Why shouldn't you share it? It's the least you could do after. After what? I stood up then. After I didn't go to the college you wanted. After I embarrassed you by working for a living. Yes, she spat. You owe us, we raised you, we gave you everything. You gave me a complex and a bill, I said, and I'm done paying it. If you don't unlock those accounts, Lucy threatened, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, you are no longer my daughter. I will write you out of the will. You will be dead to us. The will? I scoffed. Mom, look at these papers. There is nothing in the will. You have 0 assets. You have negative equity. The house is leveraged to the hilt. There is nothing to inherit but debt. Lucy stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She had lived in the delusion for so long she truly believed there was a fortune somewhere. Get out, I said. Amelia, Lucas started, looking actually worried now. Get out, I repeated. Before I call the police and report the credit card fraud, you have 5 minutes to get off my property. Lucy straightened her coat, regaining a shred of her haughty composure. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when. You realize you have no family. I realized I had no family last night at the restaurant, I said. Now I'm just cleaning up the mess. She spun on her heel and marched out. Joseph followed, looking like a ghost. Lucas lingered for a second, looking at the papers on my desk, then turned and ran after them. They didn't give up, of course. Predators don't just walk away when the prey fights back, they get desperate. The next 3 days were a masterclass in social manipulation. Lucy didn't attack me directly, she went for my reputation. I started getting calls from extended family members, aunts I hadn't seen in years, cousins who usually ignored me. Amelia, how could you leave your mother stranded at a restaurant? Amelia, I heard you're trying to evict your parents. Amelia, stealing your father's retirement money is a new low. She was spinning a narrative where I was the thief. She was telling people I had embezzled from the family accounts and she had cut me off and now I was retaliating. It was insane, but to people who didn't know better, it was plausible. I was the uneducated one, after all. Maybe I was desperate. I didn't engage. I didn't defend myself on Facebook. I kept working. But I knew I needed the final nail in the coffin. I needed something that couldn't be spun. I looked at the tuition discrepancy again. There was something that didn't add up. Even with the loans Joseph took out, the math was wrong. The loans covered tuition, room, and board, but I had seen Lucas's lifestyle. He lived in an off-campus apartment that cost $2,500 a month. He drove a new BMW, leased, I assumed. I decided to call the university registrar. "Hello, this is the registrar's office. How can I help you?" "Hi," I said, putting on my most professional voice. "My name is Amelia Miller. I'm calling regarding the account of Lucas Miller. I'm one of the financial contributors, and I need to verify the final balance before closing out a payment." "One moment, Miller, Lucas." The keyboard clacking seemed to take forever. "Okay, I have his file. What was the question?" "Just checking the final balance for his graduation clearance. We want to make sure there are no holds." There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. "Ma'am, Lucas Miller isn't on the graduation list." My heart stopped. "I'm sorry, the ceremony is in 2 weeks. We just had the dinner." "Lucas Miller was placed on academic suspension 3 semesters ago," the clerk said, her voice dry and factual. "He hasn't been enrolled in classes for over a year. There is no balance because there is no tuition." I sat back, the phone pressing against my ear. He dropped out. He dropped out a year and a half ago. The dinner, the celebration of intellect, the main table. It was all a lie, a complete, total fabrication. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Positive, he is not a student here." I hung up. The anger that washed over me wasn't hot, it was ice cold. It was clarifying. They had humiliated me for not having a degree while celebrating a boy who had flunked out. They had taken my money for tuition for a school he wasn't attending. Lucy knew. She had to know. The tuition checks I wrote, she wasn't just skimming them, she was keeping all of it. The loans Joseph took out, they were living on them. I looked at the calendar. Sunday. This Sunday was the Miller family barbecue. It was an annual tradition, a massive gathering of the extended family, friends, and neighbors. Lucy had texted me specifically to say I was uninvited and that security would be hired to keep me out. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile, even to myself. I wasn't going to break in. I didn't need to. I owned the land the barbecue was hosted on. Technically, the family estate had been put in a trust 5 years ago to protect it from Joseph's bad business deals. And who was the trustee? Who paid the property taxes? Me. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "Hey, Sarah," I said, "I need you to draft an eviction notice, and I need a police escort for a property inspection on Sunday afternoon, around 2:00 p.m. Yes, during the barbecue. Bring a megaphone." I looked at the stack of evidence. The credit card fraud, the bank statements, and now, the transcript I had just downloaded from the student portal using the password Lucas used for everything, his dog's name. I wasn't just going to the main table, I was going to flip it over. Sunday afternoon was picture perfect. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the ancient oak trees that lined the driveway of the Miller estate. From where I sat in my truck, parked just outside the main gate, I could hear the faint murmur of voices and the clinking of glasses. Lucy had gone all out. There were white tents, catered food stations, and a live jazz trio playing soft, inoffensive music. Cars lined the long gravel drive, Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas. It was a gathering of the local elite, the very people Lucy lived to impress. And at the center of it all, I knew, was Lucas, playing the role of the misunderstood genius, and Lucy, the suffering martyr of a troubled daughter. I checked my watch, 2:00 p.m. A black sedan pulled up beside me. Sarah, my lawyer, stepped out, looking sharp in a navy blazer. Behind her, a police cruiser rolled to a stop, the officer giving me a nod. "Ready?" Sarah asked, handing me a thick envelope. "More than you know," I replied, stepping out of the truck. I smoothed down my own blazer, not a dress today, but a power suit. I wasn't here as a daughter. I was here as a landlord. We walked up the driveway together. As we approached the main lawn, the chatter died down. Heads turned. Whispers started. Lucy was holding court near the champagne fountain. She saw me, and her face went from gracious hostess to pure venom in a heartbeat. She marched over, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. "I told you not to come," she hissed, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "This is a private event, security." Two burly men in black t-shirts started to move toward me. "Officer," I said calmly, nodding to the policeman behind me. The officer stepped forward, hand resting on his belt. "Ma'am, step back. This is a civil matter, but I am here to ensure the peace is kept while Ms. Miller conducts her business." Lucy faltered. "Business? What business? This is my home." "Actually," Sarah interjected, her voice projecting clearly, "it's the property of the Miller Family Trust. And as of this morning, the sole trustee, Amelia Miller, is exercising her right to inspect the premises for lease violations." A hush fell over the crowd. The jazz band stopped playing. "Lease violations?" Lucy laughed, a high, nervous sound. "Don't be ridiculous. Amelia, leave now." I walked past her, straight to the microphone stand the band had been using. I tapped it once. Thump, thump. "Hello, everyone," I said. My voice echoed across the lawn. "I apologize for interrupting the party. But since we're all here celebrating Lucas's graduation and my mother's impeccable taste, I thought we should clear up a few misconceptions." "Cut the mic," Lucy screamed, lunging for the cord. The officer blocked her path. 7 days ago," I continued, holding up the envelope, "I was told I didn't belong at the main table because I didn't go to college. I was told that my money earned from manual labor, was good enough to pay for your dinner, but my presence wasn't." I looked at the crowd. I saw shock. I saw curiosity. "So let's talk about where that money went." I pulled out the first document. "This is a credit card statement. A platinum visa opened in my name without my consent by my mother, Lucy Miller. $24,000 in charges, spas, designer clothes, this party." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lucy's face was white. "And let's talk about the guest of honor," I said, turning to look at Lucas, who was shrinking back near the dessert table. "Lucas, come here." He didn't move. "This," I held up the transcript, "is an official record from the university. It shows that Lucas Miller has not been enrolled in classes for 3 semesters. He was academically suspended a year and a half ago." The silence was absolute. You could hear a pin drop in the grass. "He didn't graduate," I said, my voice hard. "He dropped out, and for the last 18 months, the tuition checks I've been writing, the loans my father took out, they've been funding his apartment and his car. It was all a lie, $100,000 lie." Joseph, who had been standing near the bar, looked like he was going to faint. He stared at Lucy. "Lucy, is this true?" Lucy was trembling, tears streaming down her face, not of remorse but of rage. "You ungrateful! How dare you, after everything we did for you?" "You stole from me," I said. "You committed fraud. You lied to your friends, your family, everyone here. You don't have a degree to celebrate, Mom. You have a felony." I turned back to the crowd. "So, enjoy the champagne. It was bought with stolen money, but this party is over, and so is my bankrolling of this charade." I looked at Lucy one last time. "You wanted me at the kids' table? Fine, I'm taking the table with me." I nodded to Sarah, who handed Lucy the eviction notice. "You have 30 days to vacate the premises," Sarah said. "The trust is selling the property to cover the outstanding debts." Lucy collapsed onto the grass, sobbing dramatically. Lucas looked at the ground, unable to meet anyone's eye. Joseph just stood there, a broken man realizing the extent of his own blindness. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I turned and walked back down the driveway, the sound of my heels on the pavement the only music I needed. The fallout was swift and brutal. The police report I filed for identity theft was the catalyst. Once the fraud investigation started, the dominoes fell. It turned out I wasn't the only victim. Lucy had opened cards in Joseph's name too. She was facing multiple counts of fraud. Lucas tried to reach out a week later. He sent a long, rambling text about how pressure made him lie, how he was scared to tell me the truth. I didn't reply. I blocked his number. He ended up moving in with a friend, working at a retail store to pay off his own debts. The BMW was repossessed. Joseph was the hardest part. He didn't know the extent of it, but his willful ignorance was just as damaging. He moved into a small apartment downtown. We talk occasionally, but the relationship is forever altered. He's a man who let his wife cannibalize his children, and that's a hard thing to forgive. As for Lucy, she avoided prison time by pleading guilty and agreeing to restitution, but her social standing was obliterated. The main table crowd she so desperately wanted to be part of dropped her the moment the scandal broke. She lives in a small rental now, bitter and alone, still blaming me for ruining her life. And me. I'm sitting in my workshop. The sun is streaming through the dusty windows, illuminating the grain of a beautiful walnut table I'm restoring. My business is thriving. I have a wait list of clients who respect my work, my time, and my price. I bought a small house of my own, not a mansion, but a place that is mine, paid for with honest work. I looked at the main table I had built for a client, a stunning piece of craftsmanship, solid and true. I ran my hand along the smooth wood. I realized I never needed their seat. I could build my own table. And at my table, everyone is welcome as long as they bring the truth.